would often be found staring at a particularly interesting leaf, or watching a beetle meticulously climb a blade of grass. It was during one such reverie that he first saw Silas. Silas was, as snails go, perfectly average. He had a shell that swirled in a pleasing pattern of muted greens and browns, and he moved, as all snails do, with an almost imperceptible grace. Barnaby, who had never truly looked at a snail before, was captivated. Silas, for his part, was used to being overlooked, or worse, feared. Most creatures, especially the quick ones, saw him as a potential meal or an inconvenient obstruction. So when the large, twitchy-nosed creature with the softest fur he'd ever imagined didn't immediately try to eat him, Silas was intrigued. "Hello," Barnaby whispered, so softly he worried Silas wouldn't hear. Silas, startled, retracted his eye stalks a fraction. "Good day," he replied, his voice a surprising rasp, like dry leaves rustling. "What are you doing?" Barnaby asked, tilting his head. "Moving," Silas replied simply, gesturing with a slow, deliberate movement of his head towards the tiny, almost invisible speck of a mushroom cap ahead, towards that excellent specimen of fungi. Barnaby watched, fascinated, as Silas painstakingly navigated a pebble that, to the snail, must have seemed a mountain. "It will take you a long time," Barnaby observed without malice. "Indeed," Silas agreed, "but the reward is worth the effort." From that day on, an unlikely friendship blossomed. Barnaby would often seek out Silas in the garden. He'd lie on his stomach, nose twitching, listening to Silas describe the intricate patterns of dew on a spiderweb, or the different textures of various blades of grass. Silas, in turn, found Barnaby's boundless energy and curious questions endlessly amusing. "Why you run so fast?" Silas once asked, watching Barnaby zip across a patch of lawn. "Because I can," Barnaby declared, doing a joyful little hop. "And sometimes, because a fox is chasing me." Silas shuddered, his eye stalks retracting. "Such a volatile existence." "And why do you move so slowly?" Barnaby countered, gently nudging a tiny droplet of water in Silas's path with his nose. "Because there is so much to see," Silas mused, tracing the path of the water droplet with an almost imperceptible movement of his foot. "If you rush, you miss the miniature forests in the moss, the tiny creatures dancing on a sunbeam, the way the light catches the dust on a forgotten petal." One crisp autumn morning, a great storm raged. Barnaby huddled miserably in his burrow, worried. When the rain finally stopped and the sun peeked out, he rushed to Silas's usual spot. Silas was there, but barely. A heavy branch had fallen, narrowly missing his shell, but trapping him against a thick root. He was struggling, his efforts weak and futile. Barnaby's heart thumped. "Silas, are you hurt?" "Only stuck," Silas wheezed. "I cannot move." Barnaby knew he couldn't lift the branch. It was far too heavy. But he also knew he couldn't leave his friend. He remembered Silas's words. "If you rush, you miss the miniature forests." He looked around, not at the big picture of the fallen branch, but at the tiny details. He saw a narrow gap between the branch and the root. It was too small for him to get through, but Barnaby began to dig. With his strong rabbit paws, he meticulously scraped away the soil, grain by grain, just enough for Silas to have a chance. He dug and dug, not with frantic speed, but with the steady, determined focus he'd learned from watching his slow-moving friend. His nose twitched with concentration, his ears flattened back. It took what felt like an eternity. His paws ached, his whiskers were caked with dirt. Finally, a small tunnel emerged, just wide enough for Silas to squeeze through. "Silas," Barnaby puffed, utterly exhausted. "Try to go through here." Silas, gathering his last reserves of strength, painstakingly began to maneuver. It was a tight fit, slow and arduous. Barnaby watched, a silent cheerleader, offering encouragement with soft nudges of his nose against Silas's shell. At last, with a final, valiant effort, Silas emerged on the other side, free. He lay there, trembling, but alive. "Barnaby," he whispered, his voice stronger now, "you saved me." Barnaby licked a patch of dirt from Silas's shell. "You taught me to look closely, Silas, to not just see the big problems, but the small solutions." Silas looked at his friend, the fast-moving rabbit, who had embraced the world of slow contemplation, and smiled a tiny, almost imperceptible snail's smile. "And you, Barnaby, taught me that even the swiftest among us can understand the value of a patient, steady heart." From that day forward, their friendship deepened. Barnaby still darted and hopped, and Silas still ambled at his own serene pace. But now, when Barnaby paused to look at a dewdrop, or Silas watched a rabbit zip by, they both carried the quiet understanding that the fastest and the slowest could, in their own